Welcome to the Phosphenes podcast. I'm your host, Krista, and joining me today is Darla Daniels, an accomplished fiddler, singer-songwriter, and performer, to share her journey from the Buffalo Lake Métis settlement to stages all across North America. Darla, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Krista, for having me.
Now, for anybody hearing your name for the first time today, can you give us a short version of who you are and the path that brought you to where you are right now?
Yeah, my name is Darla Daniels. I am a Metis Fiddle player, freelance musician, artist, singer-songwriter, actor, and composer. I am from Buffalo Lake Métis settlement, and yeah, I guess that's the short version. I'm really lucky to be able to do what I do. I'm really passionate about what I do, and it's woven into every part of my life. And the path that got me here, my goodness, it was a ride. I've always known that I wanted to live a life of creativity and music.
Now, the fiddle holds a really special place in Métis culture. Can you share a little bit more about that tradition and what it means to you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started playing the fiddle when I was about 11 years old, and the community that I grew up in was very small. So all the kids from Buffalo Lake went to a neighboring hamlet school called Caslin. And one year, the school division brought in a new program called Art Smarts. And so they brought in a bunch of different artists, fiddle players being one of them. And it's funny because like the young kids in this community up till this point, they didn't really know, like I can only speak for myself, but generally speaking, nobody really knew what it meant to be Métis. And so what, like, sure, we grew up in the land and we know that we're Métis, but like, what does that mean? What are we tied to? And so the fiddle, I learned from a very young age, is kind of like the heartbeat of the Métis people. And being mixed myself, I have always felt like I was walking between, many different worlds. But that was the first thing that made sense to me about like, okay, what does it mean to be Métis? What does it mean to play this instrument? And Métis fiddle players within the community are kind of seen as cultural ambassadors because the instrument is so much more than an instrument. It really is like, a vessel for our history, our stories. A lot of these tunes are hundreds of years old and we're still playing them today. And so it's a responsibility more than anything else. And honestly, it gave me a voice at a really young age when I felt like I didn't really have one yet.
And was that the first instrument that you learned to play, was the fiddle?
No, actually, I started playing guitar. My dad played a little bit of guitar. He was actually missing like half of a finger, so it was really hard for him. But they bought me a guitar for Christmas one year because I really wanted one because I fell in love with Avril Lavigne and Blink-182, and I was like, I gotta play guitar. This has to be a thing. And I started writing songs that were kind of more so poems. I didn't really know how to play guitar yet. So it was just kind of piecing things together and just things that came out of my mind, I'd write down. And so I started with guitar, and then fiddle came maybe a year or two later.
And have you expanded into other instruments since then? I see a piano in the background.
Yeah. So I really only play piano when I'm composing. So I make music for theater, musical theater. Currently writing a musical right now with a friend out of Vancouver. And so that's mainly for composing, but I do kind of mess around with it a little bit. And yeah, in high school, I played a little bit of bass in like this little rock band, a little three-piece, and I thought it was so cool. But yeah, and I sing as well, but my main instruments are guitar and fiddle.
And the fiddle, your fiddling is so wonderful, and it's so neat to see that tradition being carried on.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Yeah, I think it's really neat because this instrument's always been like a massive part of how we connected to our people. And it's always, anytime there was like a celebration or a birthday or anytime it's any type of gathering, there would be a fiddle there. And we'd play music together in community until the wee hours in the morning. We still do this. And it's really cool because at one point we weren't allowed to play our instruments. We weren't allowed to speak our language. And there was a lot of like stigma around it for a long time, and we forget that. But now with social media and more visibility around celebration of culture, and it's cool to be Indigenous now. So that comes with its own things. But yeah, it is really neat that it's getting the visibility that it is now.
And you're known as the Princess of Métis Fiddle. Where did that title come from?
Yeah, so that title was playfully and lovingly given to me when I was about 15. And there's a fiddle player out of St. Paul named Calvin Volrath, and he is an absolute legend. He's he's the fiddle player in
Okay.
Canada. In my opinion, there's nobody like Calvin. He improvises, he writes, he's also just a great guy, very helpful, and just really genuinely cares about like the fiddle world and the community and music as a whole. I had known Calvin from a very young age, going to fiddle contests and jams and festivals and stuff like that growing up.
Okay.
And he was doing one of his many CD release parties at the Shell Theater in Fort Saskatchewan. And I went there with my mom and dad because we just loved his music and he always puts on a good show. And so when we got there, we were sitting in the crowd. Calvin asked me to come up on stage and do a few steps of the Red River Jig. So I went up and I danced. And yeah, in the mic, he just said, he announced and introduced me as, Darla Daniels, the princess of the Metis Fiddle. And it was really special for me as a young girl, because at that time I'd been playing fiddle for a few years, and I already knew that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know what it was going to look like or if that was even possible. I didn't really care. It's like all I cared about. And he was kind of relating and talking about the role of Métis fiddle in the fiddle world as a whole in Canada. And he had mentioned John Arcand, and John Arcand is known as the master of the Métis fiddle, and he really is. And it's really cool because the people that come up, the young people, the new generations that come up through the ranks, learning from these legends, they're the ones that really shape where the instrument is going to go, where the culture is going to go. So I thought that was really special that he said that about me.
That was probably a really wonderful memory, and he sounds like a splendid character and very talented as well. So I can imagine what an honor that was. You've performed all across North America. Where was your first, would you say, professional performance? And was that kind of a moment where you were like, this is what I'm meant to be doing?
There's been a few instances over the years where I've definitely felt that. I think because I've always known that I was very connected to that instrument, and it felt like I met a part of myself through playing that instrument and through learning that instrument. It's always been like a really deep part of myself that I've known. But to answer your question, I get those moments all the time. I from my first like big gig that I traveled for in Ottawa, I think I was like 14. I had no idea how to dress on stage. I was just a kid, and I was like in an emo phase, so my hair was like I had like the swoop, you know what I mean? It was like covering one eye. My fiddle teacher, Gilbert Anderson, who's passed now, but he was playing guitar for me, and there was probably like 800 people there, and I'm just a kid. But even then, I knew it was something that I had to just like push through, and just like this is a part of it, like I gotta just do it. And all the way up until very recently, I think, specifically to answer your question, like knowing and feeling on the stage like this is exactly what I'm supposed to do. I was so honored to play a very special concert a couple weeks ago at the Northern Lights Folk Club here in Edmonton. I was invited by one of my heroes, Dana Wiley, to come and be a part of this concert that was centered around celebrating women of folk, the women that really paved the way for musicians, like female musicians now, to be able to do what we do, tell our stories, be honest, and not have to follow a specific way of doing things or writing music that women should write. And so I was alongside like these absolute legends in Edmonton folk scene, like Maria Dunn and Pamela May, Dana Wiley. And, like that preparation for that show was incredibly demanding. I was learning songs that I've never heard before, and they were like from the 40s, 50s, So yeah, I learned a lot in that process. And I was also we were playing music for a beautiful crowd of people who love music, and they're there to listen. So yeah, I definitely had that moment.
Many Miles. I really connected with that song. I lost my dad, almost 10 years ago now. So when I heard that for the first time, that really hit me. And that was the lead single off of your EP
Yeah.
1992, correct? Okay. Would you like to share a little of your story behind that song and kind of the process of writing it?
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, Chris, I'm sorry for your loss. It's never an easy thing to lose a dad, especially, if you're close.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why I wrote this song. That came on the back end of releasing the song. And, I didn't really know what the song was going to do. All I knew was that it had to be the first single. And, I had people on my team saying, there are better songs on this record that should be the first single. This is your first release into the world, like that will separate you from being a fiddle player, so this is kind of a big deal. You should probably think about this more. But yeah, the story of the song. So I was really close with my dad. My dad was my best friend. He was my biggest fan. I'll paint you a picture. He had like a mullet and he was covered in tattoos. He had quite the colorful past. And he was just the epitome of kindness. Every room that he walked into, people knew him. He would speak Cree with the elders, and he was just there and so present and so embodied. He used to drive me to all of my fiddle lessons, every jam, every fiddle contest, anywhere that he can find a stage to put me on in Northern Alberta. It was not too far. Like he would drive me there. Yeah. And then later in Saskatchewan. But yeah, we would be driving hours and hours in the truck, and he'd be playing old country, like classic country, like Merle Haggard, George Jones, Hank Williams Sr. And I'd just be sitting in the back seat, fiddling away, just trying to figure it out. And I didn't really know what I was doing yet. And I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. It was just like, I was a kid. Don't do that. Please wear a seatbelt. And when he passed in 2022, up to that point, we always used to reminisce about those times. And he would always say, many miles we drove, hey, honey, many miles. And we did. And I think about those times often and how that shaped me as not just a musician and as an artist, putting in the miles at a young age. You kind of have to put those reps in to really earn your own self-respect.
Yeah.
But also as a person, and just to have those memories to look back on. So when he passed away in 2022, there was about an 8-month period following that I could not play instruments. I couldn't play music. I didn't pick up my fiddle. I didn't write. I didn't play guitar. I took 8 months and it was just too much. It was too painful because he was such a part of that.
Yeah.
And in August of that year, I was getting ready for my mom's birthday. And so I was digging through the closet looking for like gift wrap and cards and stuff like that. And a bag fell out onto the floor that my mom had given me of my dad's belongings. There was like his beaded cuff and some photos and some jewelry, his ring, which I wear every day.
Aww.
And this chain is actually his too. But his hat fell out. And I remember my mom knitted this hat for him. And it's like a wool knit hat that he always wore when it was cold outside. And it fell out on the floor. I picked it up, brought it to my face, and I smelled it. And it smelled like him. And like all of a sudden, like the cold concrete feeling just like lifted and it came back to me. So I ran downstairs, I grabbed my guitar, I tuned it up. It was so dusty and I wrote Many Miles.
Wow.
So it's been through like a couple of rewrites since then. Like title used to be in Cree rather. And yeah, I knew that I wanted to do something with it. So a few years later, life happened. A lot of things, were bombarding me. And it came time for me to think about putting out the record. And I knew that like kind of inspired the rest of 1992 and those stories.
Now, part of the chorus is sung in Cree, which I think is amazing. Did you grow up speaking it?
I'm not fluent yet. I would love to be fluent. My dad was one of the last fluent Cree speakers in my family. Mm-hmm. And so he did try to teach me some, and, being young, it didn't really seem important to me yet, but I wish I did retain more of that. So I wanted to have that piece of him in the song. And that's actually been really special too, because it's really helped me see who is connecting to my music. And it is a lot of Cree speakers and, a lot of Cree educators as well in and around Edmonton who are gravitating toward it. They really loved Many Miles. And I think that that's another thing that I would love to see more is young people using the language in music.
At what point did you decide you wanted to write your own songs?
I wrote songs before I picked up the fiddle. They weren't very good because I didn't really have a big scope of the world yet. I think what happened was I got to a point where I felt that there was only so much that I could say with my fiddle and in that realm, that very like niche realm.
November was when the EP got released, correct?
Right. Yeah. November, the end of November was when the whole EP came out, but I released a single in April, in July, and in September last year. And so during that process, I was like equally excited and fired up that I was like, finally, I'm doing the thing that I've always wanted to do. Like it took me 20 years, but like I'm finally doing it. I've got the right people behind me. I've got the right team. I've got the right support system. I have like the business acumen and the self-confidence and the belief that I can do this and I'm supposed to do this. But on the other side, it was also just like, I'm so terrified of being perceived. And like being on stage without my fiddle is so weird still.
My other favorite song is Trapline. Love that one. I grew up in a very remote small town in BC. I could just relate so much to wanting to just get out, get to the big city.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Trapline is a favorite for sure. Trapline was one that really divided people, I found, which is
Oh,
kind of funny.
what was the kind of the division? Either they liked it or they didn't, or
Oh yeah, yeah. There was no one, like at least no one that I talked to that was like, it's okay. They either loved it or they hated it because of the language, right? And
right.
like I got a lot of backlash online for the language that I chose to use in that song. It's very intentional because that's how people talk back home, you know? Like I cuss like a sailor and I'm you know, I'm working on it in certain, you know, situations when I'm with certain people. I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable. This is what it is. I can be myself. And so that was a lesson in like knowing that not everyone is going to like what you do, but that's also kind of the point.
Now you mentioned acting. When did that happen? And what were you in?
I've always been interested in acting. I've always been interested in film from a very young age. I didn't start actually working as an actor until like 2015. And so this was like a few years into living in Edmonton, I had gotten back like a couple years before from like this big tour that like really shifted how everything happened in music for me. And I was in a place of just like working a job and I was like, this is boring. Like I miss doing something creative. And so a good friend of mine reached out to me through Facebook and she was like, hey, do you want a job on a TV set? Like, do you want to come do like a background acting job? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I go there, there's like free food and like some of my heroes that I've watched on TV are just like walking around. I'm like, this is crazy. And I just like fell in love with it. It was really cool. And it was exciting to be on set and like see how everything works behind the camera. And so from there, I started taking acting classes with a lady that is my agent now, actually, which is really cool. We have a really good relationship. Her name's Elizabeth Ebels. And so since then, I've done a lot of commercials because, yeah, I just have like the commercial smile, apparently. That's the thing. And I've done like some short films and stuff like that. I want to do more dramatic work. I actually have gotten more into voice acting work in the last year or so.
And you do have a very nice voice, so I can see why you would get cast for voice acting roles. Now, how much pressure do you feel to carry the Métis tradition on? Because your music blends Americana, country, but you also want to keep those traditions alive. How do you balance all of that?
There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about this, and I try to be respectful and honor, you know, the responsibility that comes with playing my instrument because I think that's where I've been able to build everything off of is that those 2 decades of playing the tunes, learning from the greats and sharing that music with people who want to hear it. I don't really feel pressure to carry on those traditions because that's something that I've always wanted to do. And I've
Yeah.
always felt that responsibility, especially like in my late 20s to now. So I think that's always going to be something that I hold really close to my heart and I take very seriously.
Were fiddle players traditionally men or women in Métis culture?
20, 30 years ago, there was at that point, there would have been a mix, men
Okay.
and women. If you go further back, but not too far back, maybe 40, 50 years, primarily men. If you go back to, you know, the 20s through, well, even like, yeah, the like 1900 to the 50s, it was just men. And so the Métis fiddle was primarily played by men. Women were always in and or around that though. Like we were the ones who were playing piano or accompanying them and we were around the music. We were also leading dance as well because there's a strong dance element that's paired with the music because we are such a social people. And, you know, we were the ones that were preparing the home and preparing the space and like keeping the vibe right so that everyone felt welcome and making sure everyone was having fun, made tea for our elders and our neighbors, right? So women were always a part of that. But over time, you know, daughters, wives would start to come forward and play the fiddle. Like they usually wouldn't play it out, you know, at an event or something like that. We would probably say it was like 30, 40 years ago when women started to actually like be seen playing the fiddle. And it's really interesting because now we see this beautiful blend of Métis women who are, you know, getting Juno nominations like Brianna Lazat. And you see, you know, female fiddle players branching out into other realms of music in the industry and making space for themselves.
I had a feeling that it was primarily men until fairly recently. So thank you for going over the timeline of that with me. Now, what events would there traditionally be fiddle playing at? And what other instruments would be played as part of that? Or would it just be fiddle and dance?
It depends on where you are, but like my community, like in Lac-La-Biche area and into Edmonton now and north up all the way up to Fort McMurray, it would be specific Métis gatherings like a Métis Fest, a Métis festival, or a talent show. Talent shows, in the city are like, for the kids. And, like you go in, you do your talent, and then, first, second, third. But a Métis talent show, there's so much drama that can happen. It's
Oh,
like this whole thing. There should be like a reality TV show about Métis talent shows. And I know there was tons of other people that would agree with me, and we'd all be glued to the TV. But so you would typically see fiddle, obviously, at these events. You would see an acoustic guitar. You'd see electric guitar, like a lead guitar, a drum kit. Tons of people would be singing, and there'd be a big dance element as well. If it's a talent show, the three main categories would be fiddle, broken down into like age categories, and then jigging, Métis jigging, which is the Red River jig. That would be into women, men, and then all the different age categories. And then you would have vocals, which would be the same split category wise as jigging. And so, yeah, the dance was always a massive part of these events. And then if there was a talent show during the day, there'd be a bit of a break for everyone to get dinner. And then at the end, we would all come together for a dance. And that would just be, lots of country music, lots of covers by, one of our favorite bands and our buddies.
that was like so
Yeah.
much fun. Like, what a great event to be able to go to. And like, I'm sure some very heated rivalries as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it's so wild because like you just don't know any different until you like go out of it. But like I grew up in that world. So that was just a part of how it worked. You just expected that there was going to be some drama.
Your EP, 1992, came out in November. What can we expect from you in this year to come? What's your main focus right now, musically or just artistically in general?
Yeah. So with the EP out now, the next thing that people can expect is a big summer tour, which we're getting ready to announce very shortly here. We're just buttoning up a few more contracts. And so the summer's gonna be wild. It's gonna be crazy, lots of traveling. I'm gonna make it out to Ontario a couple times, which I'm excited for because I love the festivals out there. And so after the tour, or probably during that time as well, depending on schedules and stuff like that, the next releases will be a series of singles that I'm gonna be putting out. And yeah, after that, 2027, probably like early to mid 2027 will be the full length album, which we're working on now.
That is so exciting. Promoting your music and social media, how do you keep up with everything? It seems like artists need to be constantly on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. How do you balance that with having a personal life and downtime?
That is still something I'm working out and learning how to navigate. I think that I've always been an overworker, and for a long time, I didn't really have much of a personal life. Like all my friends and the people that I spend the most time with are people in my music family and people that I play music with or other artists that I'm good friends with. Even my partner, he's a full-time musician, he's also an engineer and a producer, and he's an artist. So yeah, I think it's easier to have a personal life when everyone around you also gets it, and their schedules are very all over the place just like yours. But yeah, you're right, like now it's very different to be an artist and putting out music than even if it's like compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I learned a lot last year because last year I was quickly met with the reality of what is required to make people see you and even to get your song heard, because I feel like it's very easy for you to just make a song and put it out. But it's like, it's like making a product. If you're like an inventor, or if you're even like, I don't know, Walmart or Best Buy, you're putting out a product, or like or merchandising a product, but you're not promoting it, nobody knows that it's there, you're wasting your song, you're wasting your time. So it is important now, because there's a lot of noise out there that you have to cut through. That kind of brings me back to what I was saying before, is like anyone can make music now, so you have to stand out, you have to be different. And the only way to do that in a way that's not uncomfortable or inauthentic is to just be yourself, and like almost be, you have to be okay with being cringy, and you have to be okay with yourself knowing that, like, okay, I'm going to be looking like a fool. I'm going to be looking silly for 10 years minimum.
None of us are perfect. We all have cringe moments and are
Oh yeah.
awkward or silly.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that like I've actually grown to love. In the beginning, I had a little bit of video editing knowledge and experience, but I didn't really know how to do that for myself, and how to convey the meaning of this story for a specific group of people. So I took like a few months of just like obsessive studying. I listened to every podcast that I could. I found everything that I could and just shoved it into my brain. And I was like, I have to make this a habit. So yeah, now I actually really enjoy it and I find it fun. I like look forward to shooting a video and editing it, and thinking about like the different ways that I can write a caption to make people do the thumb stop, instead of keep scrolling.
Where can people find your music?
All my music is on all the streaming platforms, all of them. If you want to, I would say this at my shows. If you like family updates, and like if you want to see what I'm posting and selling on Marketplace, follow me on Facebook. Facebook, I have like the biggest audience because I've been there the longest.
Okay.
If you want to see, if you like selfies, and like if you want to see my silly side and like the stuff that I just come up with on the fly, if you want to see what I look like with with facial hair, check me out on Instagram. It's just ridiculous there. And then if you like absolute chaos and like stream of consciousness videos, follow me on TikTok.
Okay, one last question, Darla, before we close this off. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Whoa, there's so much. But one piece of advice: don't stop playing music. Like just keep listening, and yeah, just stay on the path. Stay on the path and stay true to yourself on that path, and just don't stop. Don't stop even if you feel like it's painful to keep going.
I think you've got a really exciting future ahead of you, and I'm really excited to see your next album come out and some of the songs that are going to be on there because I'm sure they're going to be amazing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the great questions and the great chat, Krista. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Darla. To everyone out there listening, I hope you found this conversation inspiring, and we'll see you next time on Scenes.